Okay, thank you. So very good to meet everyone. I'm Joe Ricklat, the Director of Finance at Viritech. And I think I'll start by just making a general observation that so much of the narrative around the shift to sustainable fuels and zero emission transport focuses on kind of sinister regulation and top down, I suppose, the regulatory stick really. And what Viritech's about is creating a future where people move to sustainable solutions because they want to, as opposed to because they have to. And for us in the hydrogen space, that really means providing viable unit economics for operators. So let's dive into the detail. The problem we're really solving is that automotive manufacturers at present can't solve the demand for zero emission trucks. Demand is increasing rapidly, 44% increase in truck activity between now and 2050, but there's regulatory pressure demanding that these trucks are zero emission. The existing zero emission solutions just are not adequate. So if you have a 44-ton truck, you need 5 tons of batteries to power that truck, which equates to a roughly £38,000 loss per truck per year due to the loss in payload. And typically we see 2% margins across this industry. So loss in revenue per truck like that is simply going to cripple the unit economics of the industry. Lots of people think, well, if battery electric doesn't work, hydrogen's the right solution. And although we would agree, most of the hydrogen solutions today are still very heavy. They still use very large batteries, and they're often very volumetrically inefficient. So they're still quite cumbersome to actually package and put on a truck. Our solution. So we provide automotive manufacturers with the best performing, lightest, and most space efficient hydrogen powertrain technologies. We have a dynamic energy management system. It's a power electronics hard and software series of products, which reduces battery size by 95%, and there's a lithium reduction accordingly, as well as the saving benefit. We also have a pressure vessel solution which uses the inherent strength of hydrogen pressure vessels as a structural part of the chassis, so that although the weight of the vessel itself is still very heavy, the net additional weight is very low because you can reduce some of the chassis weight. And what we're really offering is the same unit economics as logistics operators have got used to with their existing diesel trucks. We really think that is the key motivator here to attracting people to zero emission solutions. Our intellectual property, so we're an IP heavy company. We don't produce fuel cells at one end of the powertrain. We don't produce the motor at the other end. Both of those are quite well established industries with some major manufacturers. We are agnostic to which of those we use. And what we do is we integrate those two ends of the powertrain. So we cover the kind of enabling technologies between the two, be that DC-DC converters, fuel cell controls, or high C-rate batteries, which have very high rates of charge and discharge. And as a result, can be much smaller than traditional batteries on hydrogen vehicles, or the Graph Pro hydrogen pressure vessels, which, as I mentioned, are a structural part of the chassis, so can significantly reduce weight. A market opportunity I won't dwell on much, other than to say that the automotive powertrain market will be at around 115 billion market opportunity for Viritech, and lots of our technologies actually scale to marine, aviation, and static power generation industries as well. But we're not focused on those for the moment, but the scale of the opportunity here is extremely broad. We have a licensing business model, so we plan to be the arm of hydrogen automotive technologies. What that means is we will license our technology to manufacturers for a one-off fee, and then take a royalty payment for each sale they make of the product that they will then manufacture and distribute. The reason we've chosen that model is it's very capital efficient. We don't have to invest upfront in significant capital expenditure, factories, lower skilled engineers, etc. And we can scale very quickly. So because we have a licensing model, we're using the existing manufacturing incumbent capacity, and we've already got some pretty significant partnerships with manufacturers in the works. In terms of our traction, this is quite a detailed slide, so I'll just pick out a couple of points here. Under partnerships, you'll see Anand Group. We recently signed them up this year. They're the largest tier 1 manufacturer that supply India. It's a really exciting opportunity for us to license our technology to Indian, ASEAN, and SAARC markets. So super exciting opportunity there for us. And then just, I think the particular thing to flag under funding and grants, you'll see that this year we've been awarded over 2 million in UK government grant funding projects to be spent over the next 2 years, which is really significant for us in terms of accelerating our development pipeline and obviously leveraging
30 seconds.
your investment. Thanks, Matt. I suppose I'll also, since I've got 30 seconds, I've got a bit more time than I thought. Under technology development, you'll see our mule vehicles. So we have 2 operational mule vehicles. We pride ourselves on testing our products on vehicle and iterating very quickly as a result. So we test our products every 3 hours and improve them every 3 hours. We operate in a very lean way.
And time is up. While I'm bringing in the other panelists, tell us quickly about the founders.
Thanks, Matt. I'll be sharp. So Timothy Lyons, our founder, is an ex-investment banker, 2 previous fintech companies, which he exited for 10 and 100 million pounds. And Matt Fawkes is our CTO. He's an ex-F1 engineer with previous experience, actually founding and exiting his own automotive company. So very strong technical expertise there too. I will leave this slide on screen, but I'll be well behaved, Matt, and stop talking.
No worries. One quick question from my side before I hand things over. Usually the founders pitch. Why are you here? Let's just go straight to it.
Yeah, it's a good question. So at Viritech, we really believe in kind of democratizing responsibility. We are actually currently crowd raising at the moment. We have a crowdfunding campaign open, and part of that is about sharing the vision. Our founders are really significant parts of the business. We've been around for 2 years, and certainly for the first year, they were driving a lot of the interest and a lot of the development that Viritech made. But democratizing responsibility, democratizing ownership through crowdfunding, it's all part of building the kind of hydrogen future. And as director of finance, I'm responsible for capital raising, and as a result, I'm here pitching. Yeah.
So if it's a crowd raise, how much are you guys raising, and what are the terms? I'm assuming you can share that then.
I can share that. So we have a limited amount of capacity on our crowd raise. We've only got consent for about a 2 million raise, which we're currently doing through a convertible. Shortly after that is our 5 million target price round. So investors are open to either enter the price round or the convertible round as suits them. We're expecting the price round to close kind of at the end of Q2, beginning of Q3 this year. So there is a bit of a time delay, which may suit some better than others. At the moment, we're just offering that discounted convertible to the crowd, really with a view to keeping our pace of development up while we raise our 5 million price round. We need to get a bit of cash in the door. As I mentioned, we've got a huge amount of projects on our doorstep at the moment, and the convertible is really funding those projects. One of which, to give you a flavour, is a hydrogen truck. So we're producing a hydrogen truck in partnership with an automotive consultancy, whose name I can't reveal at the moment, but are an extremely well-known consultancy, and that will prove out our products to the heavy transport market, which is obviously extremely key for us in the hydrogen sector.
Awesome. Parikshit, Shanice, take it away, ask questions. Don't feel the need to raise hands, etc. Just go for it.
Yeah, happy to kick off. So Joe noticed a number of different focus areas, and it seems natural, like you said, to focus on heavy goods or commercial vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a partnership with Anand Group. How are you prioritizing your partnerships with OEMs, and how do you go about establishing those relationships today?
Okay, that's a good question. So I think I'll start with the Apricali. So the story for Viritech really began with a Croatian company called Rimac. They set out to build the world's fastest battery electric vehicle, and they did so very effectively. Reached the end of the program for the hypercar, battery electric hypercar, and realized that actually along the way they'd created some really exciting tech. And since then, almost every major automotive OEM or tier one manufacturer solicited their advice or licensed technology from them for their own vehicles. And their route to commercialization really focused more on the technology than it did on the car. And Viritech was really born from the same ethos. So when Matt and Timothy sat down, they decided that the company's first project was going to be the Apricali car on screen. Designing technologies for a hypercar is extremely exacting in terms of requiring very high performance, but in a very constrained space from a packaging perspective. and also requiring extremely lightweight, which is obviously critical to the trucking sector, which is where hydrogen applies most obviously. So the Apokali was our first project. It was our development platform for our core technologies. And we unveiled the show car, which we've got on screen here, earlier in 2022. And following that, we had such a rush of inbound inquiry. We often joke at work that this is on screen is our business development function. You know, once we'd released the car, so many people wanted to talk to us that we had plenty of opportunities on the table. And in terms of selecting which of those we decided to go for, we actually looked at the value chain and the ecosystem around hydrogen powertrains, and we built up a core product development roadmap, really, which I'm happy to go into in a bit more detail, but covers the kind of core technologies that I covered earlier. And we looked at the right complementary partnerships. So we needed partners who would provide, for example, vehicle build, but not powertrain expertise. So it suits us to partner with people that want to build cars and suspension and all those bits that we don't do, but are looking for someone to marry together a fuel cell and an electric motor, for example, and then we can fill in the bits in the powertrain. So that was how we went about selecting partners. And we've got an announcement coming out about one of our government grants in the next couple of weeks, which is with a very significant American OEM for their light commercial vehicle application, which is a very nice example where they provide the vehicle construction expertise and we provide the powertrain technologies.
And you know, when it comes to hydrogen, there's a lot of debate around the hydrogen supply chain and the network of hydrogen producers. You know, there's so many colors now. It started with green versus gray hydrogen, and now people are talking about turquoise hydrogen, blue hydrogen, violet hydrogen. How are you guys thinking about the original feedstock and procuring hydrogen for your trucks? Or you leave that to the operating company of the truck and don't care?
Precise. I mean, so you've slightly answered the question there at the end. I mean, our business model isn't really about providing operators with hydrogen solutions. As I said, we're fundamentally a licensing technology. Having said that, it's very much our belief, as I said, that the hydrogen future is very much a shared effort, and incremental advantages in every part of the ecosystem only help Viritech. So, for example, we're based at Myra Technology Hub in the UK, which is the center of automotive innovation in the UK. And we actually introduced a hydrogen infrastructure company to Myra, and they've now gone and set up a hydrogen filling station at Myra. So, you know, where we can, even at a local level, we're happy to kind of build out and help build out the infrastructure through introductions. In terms of the color of hydrogen, as you say, it can be difficult to keep up with the latest colors on the rainbow. But in general, you know, we're very much in favor of hydrogen adoption. Some of that at the start will be grey hydrogen. You know, it's not the end goal, but we don't see that as hurting. It's very much helping the end goal, really, because it's incremental steps. You know, in the same way that converting the electricity grid to an entirely renewable grid will take time, so converting hydrogen from grey to green will take time, and having more vehicles operating on hydrogen in the near term only helps us. So, that's a kind of a broad view of it.
What do you view as the biggest challenge to scale out the tech in the company?
I think there's a few things. So I'll give you two potential challenges. One is at the moment in the hydrogen space, you know, it's not an established market. It's still an embryonic market, which means people don't know exactly what they want. That's quite good for us because it means we've established a strong technology beachhead. There's not an established status quo about what a hydrogen car looks and feels like. But at the same time, it's not the case that there are loads of RFQs with very specific specifications saying, you know, we know exactly what we need from a DC-DC converter, and we have a million vehicles needing that technology. We're in the fortunate position of providing a solution as well as a component, which means that most of our engagement, for example, with Anand Group, our Indian partnership, they actually approached us because they needed a hydrogen solution as opposed to a hydrogen component. They had very established manufacturing expertise, but they weren't really sure how to get into the hydrogen economy. They didn't have hydrogen expertise. And what we brought them was a complete solution that not only provided the components that they needed to license, but also actually defined what the right specification for a vehicle is. But that is a bit of a challenge, that it's an opportunity and a challenge that there's not a defined status quo, and to a degree, we have to kind of lead the witness a little bit in terms of defining what a vehicle looks and feels like.
Yeah.
And the second real challenge I would say for us is the cost of fuel cells. There's no question that by 2030, let's say, the cost of fuel cells will have come down very significantly. And that when we talk about offering operators unit economics that are an improvement or level with diesel unit economics, we're assuming that fuel cell costs have come down.
Right. But isn't that unit economics on an operating basis, not on a capex basis?
That's true, but we also talk about total cost of ownership, right? So total cost of ownership combines maintenance and operating with also the capex expenditure off the bat. But you're absolutely right. We can have separate conversations about those. But on the topic of fuel cells, we're forecasting cost parity by about 2028. Most major manufacturers think that there'll be parity between a fuel cell and a diesel engine by 2028. But that is a pretty significant obstacle to the business, and we have a strategic plan in place for reducing our exposure to the risk of fuel cells, actually with a solution that meets a kind of retrofit and a slightly lower cost demand in the near term, precisely to kind of guard against that risk a little bit.
And specifically, sorry.
No, please go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to ask specifically for the powertrain and your technology, what are the key pieces that still need to be de-risked from a technological perspective?
Okay, so I'll just get my diagram back on screen here so we kind of know what we're talking about. Fuel cells on the left of the screen, very established.
You got to start staring your screen. Your screen sharing is not on right now, just FYI.
Oh, okay. Thank you. How's that? So on the left of the screen, we've got fuel cells, very established. Apollo actually flew to the moon with a fuel cell in the 60s. They've been around for a very long time. We don't produce them. DC-DC converters, on the other hand, at the moment, I would say our main competitor in the DC-DC space is a company called Brucer. They produce a DC-DC which costs around £20,000. Typically, you would have two DC-DC converters on a hydrogen vehicle. Our DC-DC converter will be priced at around £15,000, and you'll only need one. I can go into the technical detail a little bit, but just to say, that's not really a technological risk. Actually, it's more a case of the development approach. Having two DC-DC converters is a legacy of a historic way of thinking where fuel cells are used on battery electric vehicles to top up the charge when the battery decreases. But actually, our architecture uses the fuel cell as the prime source of power on the vehicle, not the battery. And then the battery is just used to manage the transients between different outputs from the fuel cell. So that's quite a nice example where I would actually say there's not a huge amount of technological risk in the development. It's really a case of commercial demonstration and then rolling out more broadly. As I said, because of our development approach using mule vehicles as opposed to bench testing, we are actually developing products in a live environment. We iterate very, very quickly, and so we are, I would say, reasonably well insulated from the sort of technology risk you might be thinking of, where it's very unlikely that we're going to spend 6 months working on a product, put it on a vehicle at that point, and then find out it doesn't work. And as I say, we're operating around TRS 5 or 6 at the moment, so most of our technologies are on vehicle at the moment.
How much capital do you need to reach commercial scale? And how much time?
That's a good question. So if I refer to our 5 million raise at the moment, that will get us to, I would say, accessing niche opportunities. That means fleet trial opportunities of around 50 trucks. Although we actually have an opportunity that came in the door literally this week to serve about 20,000 trucks by 25, which is pretty interesting opportunity. So it sort of depends what you define as scale. We're a very ambitious company, and if you're talking about our kind of end game, where we're producing 300 million plus of revenue, that's a kind of 2028 onwards at the earliest time scale. As I said, that's linked to the cost of fuel cells coming down. But for the near term, we could be cash flow positive following this 5 million raise. We won't be, because we want to keep growing and stay on that trajectory. But the 5 million now is really focused about getting from TRL 5 or 6 to commercial application, first revenues, at a pretty strong gross margin of around 70%. So
yeah, if I can ask a question related to that, what are the main pain points of your first adopters that are not technological? In other words, if they're completely bought on your technology and the promise of hydrogen and not battery electric trucks, what are some of the things that keep them from adopting your technology, regardless of their spirit and interest in your tech stack?
That's an interesting question. I think it's in part the infrastructure question that you mentioned earlier. There is an element of our sales process that we're not responsible for. We are, or at least we don't have jurisdiction over. We are partnered with infrastructure providers, and as I said, we'll introduce them to clients. But to a degree, that there is a macro market shift that's required to really see mass adoption of hydrogen, and that's not something that we can influence hugely strongly. That's not to say we can't influence it at all. We have an extremely iconic hypercar as the kind of icon for the business, and as a result, we actually have carved out a space as an industry leader and a thought leader in this space. So we can move the market a little bit in that regard. At a more micro level, I don't think there are huge obstacles. If companies are producing fleet trials and they want to get a hydrogen truck up and running in the UK, they come and speak to us. There's not a huge obstructive from their end. It's really just about us raising the capital and getting the products out to market. I think that's the kind of primary obstacle which we're addressing through our capital raise at the moment.
Got it. Thank you.
Any last questions, Parikshit or Shanice? I guess my last question before we let you off the hook would be, who do you view as your biggest competitors and why?
Sure. So at a macro level, our biggest competitor is is really battery electric, the move to battery electric. I think for the reasons I've outlined, actually, that it doesn't really need to be a competitive decision. If you ask me whether hydrogen or battery is the future, the answer is very simple. It's both. Battery solutions work very well for lighter vehicles. Hydrogen's a much more logical solution for heavier vehicles. At a more micro level, the automotive industry has changed a little bit in the last 15 years. It's historically been a very conventional industry driven by large incumbent players doing things in a reasonably straightforward way, and Tesla kind of blindsided everyone. It's very unusual to see an OEM do as well as they have competitively, and we've seen of late some other stocks, including Rivian or Arrival, for example, have really suffered trying to compete with some of those established OEMs. And so we really set out with a model that wasn't going to take on toe-to-toe the OEMs, the established OEMs, as Tesla had done. We see Tesla as very much an exception to the rule. And so our ambition is to be as complementary as possible with the established ecosystem. And that's why we have a licensing model. So the automotive industry is not short of manufacturing capacity. There are very well-established tier one manufacturers for everything from semiconductors to power electronics components to pressure vessels. What we do is we provide the enabling technologies that enable them, and the innovative step really to enable them to accept technological change and adjust their manufacturing capability to accommodate future demand and the zero emission demand that we're seeing now. So in general, I would say we're complementary with the large incumbent players, even at a more micro level. The company that I mentioned who are aiming to produce 20,000 vehicles by 2020, 2025, approached us. They thought we were a competitive company when they first came across us, and then actually realized that again, we're quite complementary because we have different parts in the ecosystem, different parts in the value chain. In general, we really endeavor to kind of fit into other people's solutions and be as complementary as possible.